Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Now, locally, well, you might know Bombardier, the company. They build airplanes and stuff like that. We just had Bombardier move about 20 kilometers to the west of its previous location. And they're hailing this as a wonderful thing. And it's a thing. Let's start going through the reality. They're moving from a plant built in the 1960s to a plant built, in the 20. I don't know when they started production, but in the 2020s. Let's just put it there. So obviously, that older building has deficiencies. And they were able to remedy those deficiencies, and they're going to start producing brand new jets there for sale. They're bringing all their old employees, which is uncharacteristically good of a corporation. And that's pretty much where the positives end. The problem with the old place is it was right next to downtown Toronto. The new place is right by the airport. I can tell you the roads going into that are impassable between about 4 and 6 p.m. because everybody gets funneled into a few major intersections and there's no way around them. So those employees who are currently in Downsview and have to go to Mississauga, they're in for a rude surprise. Supposedly they're going to hire more workers, so that already heavily trafficked area with, I can't even tell you all the businesses on it, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. The other thing is they're claiming that they'll be able to make their stuff better and cleaner, etc. This environmental deception, which is what I'm going to call it, is ridiculous. That building that was built in the 1960s is still standing there. And someone's going to have to tear it down. Remember, when you're building an airplane, it's a messy job. All those fluids and chemicals and all the things that have to go into to lubricate in order to have the hydraulic controls and all this sort of thing, those get spilled. They wind up messing up the environment. And who's going to clean that up? I don't see anybody volunteering. Even more worrisome, there's probably asbestos in that building. 60s is about the last time where they're really using asbestos to any significant degree. Where's that going to go? Where is it being taken care of? There's probably PCBs. A friend of mine who works for another company, they do have some stuff that's no longer used in production, but they can't get rid of it. There's no one that's willing to take this stuff on because it's been banned worldwide. And it just sits on their loading dock and everybody knows not to touch it. But that's going to be the problem with the whole old warehouse. No one's going to be touching everything. And then in 50 or 100 years, somebody's going to get the idea, I want to build there. Probably condos. But we need to clean the site up. And then the government's going to get involved, give them hundreds of millions to clean the site up, and they'll put a little bit of grass and a couple trees on top of it. And that supposedly takes care of all of the problems. No, it doesn't. But hey, Bombardier has a new building where executives can pick out their new office and which corner they want to be facing, etc., etc. This is such a sham. I really hate it whenever I hear somebody say, oh, we're moving to somebody with less of a carbon footprint. Maybe carbon is less. Maybe. I'll give them credit for that. But then when they say an environmental footprint, no, the infrastructure blueprint you've just created is a logistical nightmare. The like if I had drivers in that area and they called in, I would tell them, shh, just find somewhere to sit and wait. You're not getting anywhere. Or you can go one of the really stupidly long ways around. Because traffic there is just indescribable. Companies do this. They're moving from Toronto to Mississauga basically because Mississauga is giving them better tax breaks. It's always the way. They would have been happy to sit in that old plant producing the same old stuff. They might have had to retool, but there's a plant in my area. It's had to be retooled a few times that I recall, but that's the point. It's a retooling. They haven't said anything about future-proofing this building. They haven't said anything about, you know, making it more ergonomic. Quite the opposite. They do everything they can to slash back on ergonomics. I've never worked at a company that did this, but I'm old enough to remember where there was an employee cafeteria. And you could, or did I work somewhere? I think I did work somewhere with that once. But everything there was more expensive than I wanted, and it wasn't expensive stuff. That was just the way things were. You don't see those types of things anymore, probably because they're not profitable in the least. And also, people don't want them. The hospital that's closest to me does have a cafeteria, and they've franchised it out to your usual suspects. Your Tim Hortons, I forget the other ones that were there, but Tim Hortons, let's pretend a McDonald's, let's pretend a Wendy's, we'll put them in there. And that's the modern equivalent to a cafeteria. For profit being sold to people. Where we get the idea that a footprint of a business is smaller and more efficient is ludicrous, especially when they're manufacturing the world's fastest consumer jet. It's a private business jet, but it'll be the fastest. That's the other thing I'm laughing at. Like, once you get about 500 kilometers an hour, like, who cares whether it's 540 or 560 kilometers an hour? Like, there's not going to be that big of a difference between the two arriving. Even if you're halfway around the world, it's going to be an hour or two that you might shave off of an 18-hour flight. It's corporate propaganda, and it's just there to remind us that they can do what they want, whereas you and I cannot. Ancient Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times, and the times are getting very interesting indeed. The good news is, humans are smart. Humans find ways to innovate. But it's time for us to find ways to innovate to benefit the most possible people. The executives down at Bombardier are all patting each other on the back and saying, look at all the tax breaks we got. Look at all the bonuses we can send out to our shareholders. Look at the bonuses we can give to ourselves. Yeah, that's what they're thinking. And indeed, that's what they should be thinking. It's their job to take care of that business. It's their job to grow that business. It's their job to make sure their business is profitable. We can't assume businesses will do anything in our favor because chances are they're not. And again, they're not supposed to. I try to encourage an ethic of, community action and of collective action. But the same token, everybody is ultimately a little bit selfish. I don't care if you bring Mother Teresa or Pope Francis or whoever it is, they're a little bit selfish. They got to where they were because they did what they wanted to do. Now, people can be selfish and they can also be generous. I try to remember the difference. Companies can never be generous. It's not written into their DNA. A company is there to accumulate wealth, and they can't do that by being generous. Maybe you'll get a sole proprietor business where the guy works with a cancer charity, guy or girl, that was rude of me, the guy or girl or the various other LGBTQ subtypes. And that's the owner's personal preference. But the second you get a board of directors, you might have Jenny, who's very concerned about heart disease and manages to get a corporate donation to them, but that's because they get exposure out of it. They get a tax break. The corporation doesn't think about being generous like you and I do. You and I think, oh, I'd like to give to the animal shelter to protect all the octopi. Sorry, throw it back to Saturday. But our motivation would be more from the heart. A corporation's is from the board. A group of people voting on a proposal. And in some cases, they can just do it as long as they can claim a certain amount. Still not charity. And that's the difference. These corporations really are trying their best to outcompete everything. Bombardier would happily expand into fast food if it had the chance. It would happily start building cars if it thought there was a market. The only reason they hold back is because they know where their strengths lie, and taking on a whole bunch of debt for picking up all the old Pizza Hut places that have been converted into other places so they could open a pizza restaurant is just not going to work very well in their business model. It's not altruism, it's profit management. So, whenever you hear about companies moving or doing strange things, the strange things can be simply because they don't have the right people on the board, but sometimes it's because they're trying to do something that you've never heard of. And unfortunately, that's never going to change. It's impossible to build an ethical corporation, and that's just because of the way corporations work. They have shareholders, they have owners, they have all that, who are all looking for a profit. This move from Bombardier, while it's being championed as being a model of efficiency and everything, is going to leave a lot of damage behind that's just going to be swept under the carpet, and our children and our grandchildren can deal with it. Sadly, that's the state of affairs in the world. With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, because sharing is caring. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Don't forget to click the icon that will notify you for every single episode that we upload. And we hope you have a fantastic day.